Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast, brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. It's pretty rare that we get through the month of June without talking too much about the tropical Atlantic. And one of the reasons why we're having this issue this year is kind of shown to you in this animation here. So this was kind of sunrise to sunset yesterday. And what I want you to see here as we watch this animation, in fact, let me just pause it right when we get to the middle of this, is you can see the haze that is right over here, okay? Now, this piece you see right here, this little brighter spot overall, this is actually sun glint. So this is where the ocean's reflecting the sun. But what you see coming off of Africa here is a lot of dust. And what you really don't see across the open tropical Atlantic or the main development region here is any large organized clusters of thunderstorms. And that's because some of that dust that is coming through there is helping to suppress that. We call this the Saharan air layer. And you may have been hearing quite a bit about this recently. Sometimes the dust from the Sahara can actually make it clear across the open Atlantic and get right here into the Gulf of Mexico and into the central United States. We can actually get Saharan dust like coming in on the dew in the morning on our cars across the midsection of the United States. But that dust is helping to suppress a season that is already quite suppressed in terms of activity. Here's another way by which we can gauge the activity in the tropical Atlantic. When you look at this map, what you're looking at in the color coding here is the difference in the wind speed at about a mile above our heads to about 6 miles above our heads. So we call this deep layer wind shear. Hurricanes can't stand it. They have to have very still environments in which to thrive. Warm ocean temperatures, still environments, they can really go. Well, we've got the warm ocean, but we do not have the still environment. Very high wind shear values that are all through this area. And as a consequence, we just can't get anything to really get going. In addition to that, look at how strong the trade winds are. Now, normally what we watch for are these waves in the flow of the jet stream coming off of the west coast of Africa, on which these tropical systems form. But you can see here that the trade winds are very, they're not meandering too far north-south, and they're really moving quite quickly across the open Atlantic Ocean. So this is just why not a lot's going on. But maybe while you're watching this, you're seeing what's going on right here. You see what we've got going on in the Eastern Pacific is Alvin. And this is a tropical storm right now. It is not expected to impact Hawaii. It's not expected to impact the Baja of California. In fact, it's just going to stay out in the open ocean and really not be too big of a deal. But one of the reasons why the East Pacific is a bit more active than the Atlantic is because of this. Now, we often look deep in the atmosphere to see where we have good upper level support for the development of tropical systems. And one thing we like to look at is called VP200. The VP stands for velocity potential. And where the values are negative, like they are today in the area I just circled, we basically allow the upper levels of the atmosphere to permit rising motion from the layers below. We can see that for the rest of this week, it's going to be confined, and really into week 2, it's really going to be confined here to parts of the East Pacific. Where there are red colors, we have sinking motion in the atmosphere in general. So this is why we've not seen a lot of activity in the tropics in the Atlantic, simply because the upper level atmosphere hasn't been supportive, wind shear has been too high, it has been dusty, and the trade winds just aren't in the right configuration. There have been some seasons where big time June rains come out of these tropical systems. I'm going to take you back 2015, for example. Tropical storm Bill came through and soaked the eastern Corn Belt and really hurt a lot of our nitrogen management practices because of how much rain we got this time of year. So we've been getting our moisture from other places outside of the tropical system. And this is just showing you that yesterday, very stormy day across much of the United States here, with nearly, actually over 250,000 lightning strikes in the image that you see here just in the last 24 hours. And we saw some nasty storms roll through. Now, just to kind of take a look at where that heavy precipitation was located, the map on the right shows the last 72 hours of total accumulated precipitation. And even though we've kind of lacked a big organized system moving across the country, we're juiced. The lower atmosphere has plenty of moisture in it, and we're just going to daily watch for convection to erupt as this pattern slowly adjusts. There's been some localized heavy flooding, like you can see down in parts of Texas, also getting here into the lower and mid-Mississippi River Valley and up into Illinois, some very heavy rainfall as well. Some of the storms that have moved through parts of Washington have actually impacted the cherry harvest right now. And I want you to make sure that you understand this. We had heavy rain that moved through California several weeks ago that impacted their cherry harvest. So if you like cherries and you're trying to look for them in the store, you might find that prices are high and maybe the quality is not what you want because weather has really impacted the production of that cherry crop this year. Storm reports, I got them over here on the left-hand side. You can go back to the 24th here, the 25th, and the 26th. And you notice while we still have had quite a few severe weather reports, we've not quite had the widespread big outbreaks of severe weather that we can sometimes get in June. And one of the big reasons for that is that much of the United States really has lower wind shear conditions right now. I took you up to the jet stream. Our major pattern feature is this low pressure center, this upper level low that's spinning here in the Pacific Northwest. And it is what's going to be keeping this area very active over the coming days for severe weather. But get south of that, yeah, the Gulf of Mexico is still pumping in moisture. You're going to see that in a few minutes. But why we're not seeing so much severe weather across this section of the country over the last few days, or maybe even over the next few days, is because we're lacking that upper level wind shear. But this particular map here tells us where to keep our eyes out in the coming days, and that will be primarily in Montana today, and also we're watching a complex of thunderstorms moving across the north central plains coming out of the Dakotas into Minnesota, Wisconsin, over toward Michigan. Outside of that, yes, thunderstorms, but not of the severe nature. When we get into the day here on Friday, that's the map that's over here on the right-hand side. We're still watching that slowly moving upper level trough, and it's going to keep our focus on severe weather in parts of Montana and North Dakota. And I'll tell you something, I've chased storms in Montana and North Dakota. Beautiful, beautiful storms up in that part of the United States, often because we have unimpeded views and some crystal clear air at times. You're going to see as we get into the day on Saturday, we're still watching the north central plains as our major focal point. But you can see that out ahead of this, we do have a couple of areas on Friday and Saturday that are moving through parts of the Great Lakes states and then over toward the Northeast we're going to watch as well. Let's take a look at the high resolution rapid refresh model here, just getting us through middle of the day on Friday here. So you just saw it animate forward. Let's watch it again. Notice the thunderstorm complex coming out of the Dakotas early in this animation, moving through. Here it is again. So this is early this morning, moving through Minnesota, Wisconsin, over toward Michigan. We're going to have to watch to see how far to the south these lines can sometimes build, because when we're in summer like this and we've got plenty of moisture, these thunderstorms, as we talked about in our last video, can produce their own outflow on which new storms begin to form. Across the southeast, look at this, just going to pop on the heat later today. We have a weak upper level disturbance moving through parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, getting into the deeper south there, but overall widely scattered showers and storms. Coming back over to the southwest, well, part of the southwest here, watch it again. You can see storms blowing up right there through parts of New Mexico, Colorado, getting into parts of Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas as well. But as I said, the big show is going on up here in the Pacific Northwest. Watch this one last time. You can still see widely scattered showers and storms, and Montana, we're going to have to watch out very carefully. Let's play one more time here. Look at that right there, coming in the later afternoon, evening hours in the day on Thursday. So spend a lot of time here on the short range forecast because we've got a lot going on. Now, what about the next week? Well, we see taking us out through the morning of July the 4th, there is certainly a corridor right in through here where it's going to have a lot of activity. And part of that is induced by that upper level trough that's sitting here that's slowly going to migrate. But we're going to see a boundary kind of hanging out in this area on which a lot of storms are going to form. There will be a section of the country right in through here and also over the southeast where we're going to see things that are relatively dry. But I say relatively dry because the Gulf of Mexico is open. We're going to continue to see showers and storms popping out of that, no problem. Before I show those details, let me show you at least week number 2. I got the European model on the left and the GFS ensemble on the right. You can see that through week 2, look at this. We kind of see it in both models. We have a corridor here in the U.S. that is going to continue to remain stormy. You also notice that in both models, they're trying to keep parts of, the Gulf Coast dry. But again, nothing shutting down the Gulf of Mexico in terms of bringing in that moisture. Let me show you what I mean. This particular map is going to take you every 6 hours out through the next 10 days. Now, when we're watching this map, we're looking for anything that's above 60 degrees on the dew point scale. And I think you're just going to see as I click play here that outline I just made, well, it just doesn't go away. You see, if the Gulf of Mexico is getting shut down, we wouldn't see such high values of dew point temperatures stretching across such a huge section east of the United States, east of the Rocky Mountains. So these higher dew point temperatures, which will be getting up into the upper 60s and lower 70s at times, means storms are going to fire every day. We're going to have to watch to nowcast these storms to see where they're going to go. But I'm just telling you, this is a slightly drier pattern, but it's still not dry. There's still going to be lots of thunderstorms, and it'll be wet in through this corridor here that I just drew for you. So that is kind of what our precipitation outlook looks like. Let's kind of step through it with the European model. Now again, we're going to watch right in through here as I click play. Outside of that, you'll see flashes of green down here just showing you daily convection, the atmosphere kind of popping, but keep an eye on that circle I just drew. See, as we play forward, we just continue to see, I know it's playing fast, but you notice how you just continue to see this corridor here, seeing a lot of showers and thunderstorms over the coming days. Big high atmospheric pressure over here is just letting this moisture kind of come in, and that is why we just keep seeing those storms across the northern plains, and everywhere else east of the Rocky Mountains, it's a daily event. Pop, pop, pop. When are the thunderstorms going to be coming up? So we're going to have to watch those high resolution models every day to kind of pick up on the details. Now, let's turn our attention to temperatures because there's I think a pretty big story here as well. This is global 500 millibar height map, and it's valid here Thursday evening. And I want you to pick out a couple of interesting features here. First, this trough. Second, this trough, and third, that trough. Now you notice that out ahead of them, ridges are building. And this ridge in Europe is big. In fact, U.S. women's soccer team will be playing on Friday, and they're going to be playing in some pretty serious heat out ahead of that trough under that ridge in Paris. And you can notice that out ahead of each of these troughs, we got some pretty big heat building into Alaska, into the north central part of the United States, and here into Europe. So this is just looking out over the next 5 days as to parts of the U.S., parts of Europe, parts of the globe that are going to be seeing some pretty extreme heat. Now, what I want you to watch is something we put into great detail into our long-range forecast, which came out yesterday. I'm going to animate forward for you here, 500 millibar flow pattern, getting us all the way out here until about the 10th, 11th, 12th of July. Now, when you watch that animation here, I want to take you back to a couple of important features. Ready? So as we get through the end of this week, this is now Thursday night into Friday morning, we see the dominance of that western U.S. trough and the sizable ridge bringing in some warmth. I'll show you those temperatures in a second into the midsection of the country. I've just now stepped you through the weekend. Now, as we get into early next week, do you see this little low pressure system that's diving down through the north central Canadian prairies there? Now, out ahead of that, yep, we're going to be bringing in some warmth in through here. But that's an interesting play because really what this is going to allow to have happen is our bigger trough is going to sweep back out over into the Pacific here. And we're going to have this secondary trough that's kind of coming off the northeast. Meanwhile, a little cutoff feature is trying to set up down here in parts of south central Texas. And that's why Texas, as I show you these temperature maps, is going to avoid some of the extreme heat over the coming days. But as we continue to play this forward, we see the flow of the jet stream, according to the European ensemble, going back into what we discussed by the time we get to the 10th, 11th, 12th of the month. And that is the jet streams coming down like this, makes a bit of a turn, comes back over into this broader trough feature that you see here. Now remember, if we wanted to keep the heat around, we got to get what we're going to be seeing in the next few days, which is a bigger ridge like this. Instead, the GFS and the European model are both trying to flatten that out and really feature a broader trough feature here. So that means the warmth we're going to be getting for the next several days doesn't look like it's going to last. And I went into great detail about that in the long-range forecast. So let's see some of the short-range details here, okay? High temperatures in the day on Thursday. As that ridge builds, look at the triple-digit heat we might be getting here in parts of eastern Colorado, parts of Nebraska, and getting over to Kansas. So we're going to be seeing some upper 90s, maybe some triple-digit there. Across the southeast, a lot of 90-degree weather here. And of course, down here in the desert, we're really scorched. But as I play this forward, let's just see how temperatures change over the coming days. Friday, high temperatures here, still under that ridge, building in the heat in the mid part of the country. Look at the Pacific Northwest where the trough is sitting. Yep, 70s. This is getting into the day on Saturday. Really hot day. We're going to be bringing temperatures that'll be up toward 90 clear into this section of the United States. And it's been a long time, especially over here, that we have seen temperatures this warm. So let's take those off there and just keep going with our temperatures. This is Saturday. Now we're into Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and Wednesday. Now, what we see at that point is that upper level trough starts to sweep across, and this is where we get lots of daily thunderstorm activity across this section of the country. Meanwhile, the southeast, you're going to stay quite warm as we progress into next week. In fact, much of the south is. So that's kind of a higher resolution look at our temperatures. Let's kind of blow this out and just look at days 6 through 10 and days 11 through 15. We can see that this region in Texas, getting over toward the lower Mississippi River Valley, kind of hangs onto that cooler pattern. A lot of thunderstorms in there, a lot of cloud cover, and a little cutoff low that's going to be coming in underneath our ridge that's moving up into parts of eastern Canada. So warmth continues in this corridor, slight cool bias here. Pacific Northwest still remains a little cool. You notice, though, that by the time we got out to that 11 to 15 day time period, the jet stream, remember, does something a bit more like this. So heat comes in here, but we go back over toward more seasonable temperatures across the region I just hatched there. Throughout this entire forecast time period, parts of the southeast do continue to carry their warmer bias. Now, speaking of warmer bias, check out this animation. This is for Europe. This is 500 millibar heights. We got change. We have change coming for Europe, because you notice I've been talking a whole lot about the heat in Central and Western Europe, and it is still on for the next couple of days. Look at this. This is Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Now, a trough, really a big one, starts to build in over here, and we're going to see what that does for precipitation and temperatures here. Black Sea, again, just looking north of the Black Sea, which is right in through here, we can see that change is coming. Now, before I move on, we are going to get a rebound of heat in Europe, in Central Europe. That rebound of heat is coming in, but overall, we do kind of break down the super highly amplified pattern we had, and it seems as though as we progress through the forecast, things do moderate somewhat. But do notice we still hang on to this trough here with a broader ridge in that area, but big time trough north of the Russian wheat belt here. And so let's see what that means in terms of precipitation. So if I just take you out here through the next 5 days while the heat is still on, look at parts of Spain, France, and Germany. Right now, no precipitation is expected from the European model. Now, we still might pop on some afternoon heat here, but as those temperatures really start to scream, you're going to see some high humidity and some very uncomfortable conditions. Like I said, U.S. women playing some soccer right here against France, and it's going to be very, very hot. Meanwhile, let's just color this in so we can make sure that we see where we are in the world. You know, right over here around the Black Sea region, which is, again, right in there, we do have storms coming. You can see the big storms that are coming up here north of the primary Russian wheat belt as well. So that's a bit of a change, and we talked about that in our last few videos, that was going to be happening. So putting it all together, Europe, we keep much of Europe dry here, but this region where the troughs are coming in, that's where things are looking wet. All right. Okay. A lot to diagnose in that video, but we're going to go and wrap this one up right here. We Nutrien Ag Solutions hope you look forward to our next ag forecasts coming out soon. Have a great week and weekend. We'll talk to you then. Thank you.